Paul Simon talks about what ended his marriage to Carrie Fisher. Paul Simon was born Paul Frederick Simon on October 13, 1941, in Newark, New Jersey. He grew up in the nearby borough of Queens, New York. Simon grew raised in a Jewish household that worked hard, and he heard and felt the rhythms and sounds of American pop music early on. His father was a bassist and bandleader who taught him about jazz and classical music. Simon became interested in creating songs after the rise of early rock and roll in the 1950s, especially musicians like Elvis Presley and the Everly Brothers. Simon met Art Garfunkel, who also lived in Queens and had a beautiful tenor voice, when he was a youngster. They became friends because they both loved music and started playing together under different aliases. Simon had a wonderful talent for writing lyrics that mixed conversational reality with literary profundity, even when he was quite young. His early songs showed that he was very sensitive to feelings, loneliness, and hope, which would be the main themes of his career. Simon and Garfunkel were one of the most important folk rock groups of the 1960s. Their music came out while America was going through a lot of changes, both socially and culturally, and when many were questioning their own generation. Paul Simon's lyrics and Garfunkel's dreamy harmonies spoke to the fears and hopes of a whole generation. Simon showed that he could mix personal reflection with social satire in songs like The Sound of Silence, Mrs. Robinson, America, and The Boxer. His songs were literary without being snobby, and they were intellectual without losing their emotional sincerity. People now think that albums like Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Time, Bookends, and Bridge Over Troubled Water are important works of 20th century popular music. But there were creative tensions beneath the beauty of the music. Simon, who wrote most of the songs, wanted more artistic freedom, while Garfunkel wanted to be an actor. These problems eventually caused the two to break up in 1970, not long after the release of Bridge Over Troubled Water, which is one of the most famous albums in music history. Instead of giving up after Simon and Garfunkel broke up, Paul Simon started a solo career that would be even more bold and exciting. Without the pressure of being in a duo, Simon added jazz, gospel, Latin rhythms, and subsequently world music styles to his songs. Albums like Paul Simon, 1972, There Goes Rhymin' Simon, 1973, and Still Crazy After All These Years, 1975, showed a songwriter who was growing up gracefully and honestly dealing with issues of love, faith, aging, and identity. Simon had a remarkable gift for making deep thoughts easy to understand. Songs like Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard and Still Crazy After All These Years showed this by mixing fun with sadness. During this time, his lyrics showed that he was becoming more emotionally intelligent. Simon didn't write from a place of youthful optimism, he wrote from his own life experiences. He wrote about regret, nostalgia, resilience, and the passage of time in a manner that few pop artists had. Paul Simon's 1986 album Graceland changed not only his career but also the possibilities of popular music around the world. During the last years of apartheid, Simon worked with South African artists to mix American folk pop with African rhythms, harmonies, and instruments. The outcome was a breakthrough mix that went against the idea that pop music is mostly from the West. You Can Call Me Al, Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes, and Graceland are songs that became instant classics. The record itself aroused both praise and political debate, and some people attacked Simon for breaking cultural boycotts. However, most people agreed that Graceland brought more attention to African musicians and musical traditions than anything else. The album earned many Grammy Awards and brought global music styles into the mainstream, inspiring many musicians that came after it. It confirms Simon's image as an artist who isn't afraid to change, take risks, and really listen to cultures other than his own. Paul Simon kept trying new things on his latter albums, just like he had done on his earlier ones. The Rhythm of the Saints, 1990, So Beautiful or So What, 2011, and Seven Psalms, 2023, are all examples of a songwriter who was becoming more interested in spirituality, death, and finding meaning. His poetry became more introspective, his melodies became more complex, and his orchestration became more nuanced. Instead of following commercial trends, Simon chose to be honest in his art. Later songs of his often sound like quiet chats with the listener. They are thoughtful, insightful, and very human. His voice got older, but his ability to write lyrics and melodies stayed keen. The impact of Paul Simon is beyond measure. Many people think he is one of the best songwriters ever. frequently likened to literary figures for his command of words and metaphor. People today use his songs to express their feelings. Played at weddings, funerals, protests, and times when people were thinking about themselves. Simon has won several prizes, including several Grammys, 2 entries into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and praise from organizations that celebrate great work. But his real triumph is that his music still speaks to people of all ages. Paul Simon's personal life has been full of strong feelings, profound thinking, and times of both connection and loss, just like his musical path. There is a complicated love history behind his brilliant songwriting and the fact that he became one of the most famous musicians of his generation. This history was influenced by youthful idealism, artistic ambition, and the pressures that come with celebrity. People knew Simon was intellectual, sensitive, and introspective from a young age. Traits that made him a talented songwriter but also made his relationships hard. He had 3 marriages and many other romantic failures in his life. Each marriage represented a different stage of his emotional and artistic growth. In the middle of the 1960s, while Simon was living in Europe, he had one of the most important relationships of his early adulthood. Simon started seeing a young English woman known as Kathy Chitty when he was traveling and performing in other countries, including England and France. Biographical reports may use several forms of her name. This time was really important for Simon. He was still trying to get noticed. Not sure what the future holds and living distant from home. The connection gave him someone to talk to and a place to feel secure when his profession was still new and uncertain. Kathy became an important part of Simon's creative life. Their connection inspired some of his most heartfelt and emotionally raw songs. Kathy's song, for example, portrays the pain of being apart, the longing, and the calm closeness of young love. The song is proof of how deeply this relationship affected him. It keeps its emotional truth even after the romance is over. But as Simon's career took off, especially after the huge success of Simon and Garfunkel, the equilibrium in the partnership changed. Fame meant being away from home for lengthy periods of time, having more work to do, and feeling emotionally distant, which was hard to overcome. Simon's growing success made both him and his partner feel insecure and put stress on their relationship. The stress of being in the public eye, always traveling, and being obsessed with their work slowly tore them apart. In the end, even though they cared about each other, the relationship couldn't last since Simon was becoming more famous, and they both decided to break up. This cycle, where Simon would have a strong connection with someone and then feel pressure from his ambition, would happen in his following relationships. He married Peggy Harper in 1969 and had their first child together, but they divorced in 1975. His second marriage to actress and writer Carrie Fisher was short but very important to him emotionally. Both were very smart, creative, and thoughtful people. But their common sensitivity and personal problems made it hard to find enduring stability. In contrast, Simon's third marriage made him feel more mature and stable emotionally. He married Eddie Bickle, a singer and songwriter who was also a great talent, on May 30, 1992. Their union was a meeting of equals, 2 musicians who understood the pressures of fame and creativity yet had different personalities when it came to their art and lifestyles. Bickle's down-to-earth character and Simon's experience enabled them build a relationship based on respect, working together, and living as a family. Paul, Simon, and Edie Bickle all became parents to 3 kids, Adrian, Lulu, and Gabriel. Being a father changed Simon's priorities in a big way. He kept making and performing, but being a husband and father gave him a better sense of balance and perspective. Simon has often said in later interviews and comments that age, experience, and self-awareness helped him deal with this part of his life with more patience and emotional clarity than he had when he was younger. Paul Simon's short but very passionate marriage to actress and writer Carrie Fisher is still one of the most talked about partnerships in music and Hollywood history. Their marriage lasted less than a year, but it had a lasting emotional effect on both of them and became a defining moment in Simon's life. Simon has honestly and thoughtfully thought about what really caused the marriage to end, and he knows that love alone was not enough to solve the deeper problems they were facing. Simon has said frankly that timing was a big reason why the relationship fell apart. When they met in the middle of the 1970s, both were already famous, had complicated feelings, and were quite busy with their careers. Simon was coming off the huge success of Still Crazy after all these years, and Fisher was dealing with sudden global celebrity after Star Wars. Simon once said, "We were both in emotionally rough places, and instead of finding calm together, we made each other's chaos worse." Simon said that one of the main problems was that they didn't get along emotionally since they dealt with stress in completely different ways. Fisher was open about her problems with drugs and mental health, and she often used comedy and sharp wit to protect herself. Simon, on the other hand, was more private and thoughtful. When he was too much, he would become silent and write songs. Simon thought about how Carrie lived out loud. "I thought about everything in silence." That disparity turned into a wall instead of a balance over time. Simon was very dedicated to his work, which also put a strain on their relationships. He didn't just work in music. It was an obsession that needed being alone, being strict, and not getting too close to people. Simon admitted that this made Fisher feel that his work was more important than him. He said, "I was married to my songs in a way that didn't leave much room for anything else. I didn't know how to be a good husband when I was always looking for inspiration." Fisher, who was also driven and creative, needed emotional support and comfort. Needs that Simon had a hard time meeting. Later, he said that he didn't realize how much his emotional detachment hurt her. Simon said, "I thought love was enough. But love that isn't available turns into loneliness." Another source of stress was the frequent public attention on their relationship. Because they were both famous, the media started to speculate about their marriage practically right away. Simon said that their fights got worse since they didn't have any privacy. "We didn't get to fail quietly," he remarked. Knowing that the world was watching made every fight seem bigger. Even though they were apart, Simon has always spoken about Fisher with a lot of love and respect. He has said that she pushed him intellectually and emotionally, even if the relationship didn't last. Carrie was smart, brave, and brutally honest. "She saw parts of me that I didn't want to see, and that's not a small thing," Simon added. Their marriage ended in 1984, which was hard but also changed them. Simon has said that the event made him face his own emotional limits and habits in relationships. "That marriage taught me who I was when love asked for more than I could offer." He thought about it. It was a painful lesson, but it was one that needed to be learned. Simon has been with Eddie Bickle for a long time now, which suggests that he altered how he thought about relationships as he grew and became more conscious of himself. But his marriage to Carrie Fisher is nevertheless a sad memory of a time when two great talents met at the wrong time. Simon said, "We loved each other. But love sometimes finds you before you're ready to carry it." Their marriage was short, but it left behind songs, memories, and hard-earned wisdom. This shows that even broken marriages may help you find your way.